welcome back. My name's Morgan and this is my channel, Pisces Paperbacks. Hello, my love. And today I want to talk about my best and worst romances that I read this year. This year as in 2019, not this year as in 2020 when I am filming this. I'm gonna do my top 5 of both best and worst, so starting from like the bottom and then working up to my most or least favorite romance of the year. And I'm gonna start with my favorite book. So my 5th favorite romance of the year is actually a series, and that is the Night Huntress series by Jeaniene Frost. This series follows a half vampire hunter named Kat and her snarky vampire boyfriend Bones. And honestly, these books individually, they're not like the highest of qualities, but it is really like a joy to me, which I don't read like romance series that often. So to read a series where you really watch their relationship develop over the course of, I read 6 of the 7 books this year, and they're just so fun and they have really inventive plots, and there are some steamy scenes, let me tell you. So that's like, it was just a really fun experience. And those were also some of the I don't want to say favorite audiobooks I listened to. They were definitely some of the more fun ones, but I hated the accent that Bones had. Like, it's like a Cockney British accent. Like, it's so bad, and I almost stopped listening to the first book because I just couldn't stand it. Please don't look at my dog's butt if you can see it. I'm sorry. She's apparently an exhibitionist. The next book I want to talk about is Ravished by Amanda Quick. This is one of my favorites because Amanda Quick, as I have talked about before, is my favorite romance author. Probably more out of nostalgia, since she was the first romance author that I really started reading consistently, whose books I sought out. Ravished is about a girl who's really obsessed with fossils, and she believes there's a smuggling ring working out of the caves where she usually does her like little explorations. And so she enlists the help of the Lord of the Land, who's like everybody thinks is such a bad guy. And I loved this book for a lot of reasons, but mostly it was the way that the couple like cared about each other. Hi. You don't read a lot of books, or at least in romances, like you kind of have to just assume or believe that the characters really care. Sorry, my camera stopped working. So you have to really believe that the characters care about each other and just kind of assume. But in this book, you could like really see the development of their relationship and how they felt about each other. And it was so cute. They defended each other to other people, and I could just tell that they were in love. Number 3 on my list is another kind of like umbrella favorite, and that was Tessa Dare. I read 5 Tessa Dare novels and 3 Tessa Dare novellas this year, all in the Spindle Cove universe, and I loved all of them. She is just a very talented writer. With all of her books have different relationship dynamics, so they're not really repetitive, and they all just are so good. My favorites that I read from her are A Lady by Midnight and Any Duchess Will Do. A Lady by Midnight has my favorite character or relationship dynamic where the hero is of a lower social standing and there's just a lot of pining involved. But now that I've been like marinating on these books for a couple weeks, I think I like Any Duchess Will Do better, because I just liked the ending of that book better, and their like confession scenes and how that whole relationship played out. But overall, I'm very excited to read more Tessa Dare in the new year. A new favorite author for sure. The number 2 book on my favorite romances of the year is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. I've talked about this book a lot on my channel. I've talked about a lot about all of these books because I love them. They're my favorites. But Wolfsong is the best slow burn romance I have ever read in my life. It's so good. Definitely like an all-time favorite. It's about a boy named Ox who kind of has like a rough childhood and befriends the youngest son of the family that moves in next door, and there are werewolves involved, but it's like so much more than just their relationship. It was perfect. It was a perfect book that brought me to tears and still brings me to tears, and I need to read the rest of the series. Before I get to my number 1 favorite book of the year, or favorite romance of the year, which you might be able to guess, and if you guess correctly, maybe let me know in the comments. I talked about that book a lot, but I want to talk about my 5 least favorite romances before I get there. Number 5 was Coming to Her Rescue by author whose name I don't remember. I'm sorry, I will put it on the screen. This book is more of a situation of me not particularly liking the tropes that this book plays with. I'm not a huge fan of like military adjacent romances, and this just wasn't my cup of tea. What are you doing? I read an arc of this book that I got from NetGalley during a moment when I was just like, oh my god, NetGalley exists. Time to read as many books as I can in a very short amount of time, and this was just not a good one for me. Number 4 on my least favorites is Rebellious Desire by Julie Garwood. I think the overall feeling of this book that really bothered me was that it was so abrupt. Like, this book is only barely 300 pages, and Julie Garwood's historical romances, at least in my experience, tend to be closer to 400 pages, or even longer than that. And I also hated the hero in this book. He was one of those assholes who like thinks he knows best, so he never tells the woman any of his plans, even though they're all about her safety, and she should definitely like be in the know about like what's going on. I just hated it. I will also say that the like mystery subplot or you know, basically the plot, investigative plot of the book is wrapped up in like half a page. At the very end, it's like not a really dramatic reveal. All of the drama happens like off screen and is like told to you later. So this book I think was just kind of too short, not very well developed, and I also think, yeah, this was published in 1986, and I do think that it suffers for being dated. I've read other historical romances from this time. I mean, I love historical romances. I've read a lot of romance that were written in the 80s and 90s, and not all of them suffer from that kind of being dated feeling, but this one definitely did. Another book that felt really dated was Trust Me by Jeaniene Krentz, who's actually, that's another pen name for Amanda Quick, who wrote one of my favorites of the year. And Trust Me was just bad. Like, it just wasn't good. They didn't have chemistry between the two main characters. It was also written, I believe, in the mid-90s and suffers very much from that because the hero is supposed to be like a computer software genius. Like, he's like a CEO of an extremely successful software company that does like, I don't know, cybersecurity, but you can tell from the perspective of someone who lives who read it in 2019, that the author had no idea what she was talking about, and it's just very funny to read. The sex scenes sucked. This really stuck with me because I was on like a public bus, like I was taking the bus to New York City and listening to the audiobook, and they had just had sex, and she's like mad at him for some reason, and he's about to leave, and he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, you're not even gonna say something after giving me my first orgasm, and then slams the door in his face. Like, that would never happen, because how would he know? How would he know? It really bothered me, but also made me very embarrassed to be listening to that in public. So that was not a great book for me. Number 2 on my least favorite romances is Tangled Threat by Heather Graham. This book was also a case of it just not being good. Excuse me. Like, the core mystery was extremely convoluted, very badly like resolved. The reveal of whoever the bad guy was happened like in the epilogue almost. You're in the way, honey bunny. Happened in like the epilogue, so it was very tacked on to the end and didn't really make any sense. I also hated the relationship in this book, specifically because they never talk. Like, every single conversation they have, for the first half of the book, it's them being awkward to see each other again, and then they have one conversation in the middle where they're like, why did you call me? And it lasts for half a page, and then they bang. And then the rest of the book is them going like, don't go out by yourself because there's a killer. Are you going out by yourself? Don't you know there's a killer? And then just like keeping track of where the other person is. But they never talk. You never see them have any chemistry. And it was just not a great read, especially since between like every scene there was like an interlude. It wasn't like a specific chapter, but there was a lot of times when there was just paragraphs and paragraphs of lovingly written descriptions of the beautiful northern Florida landscape. It said multiple times throughout the book that tourists always flock to South Florida, but the rolling hills of North Florida, beautiful, green, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what is this propaganda? Who wrote this? I don't understand. So that was just kind of weird. That was a 1-star book. My least favorite romance of the year is Someone to Watch Over Me by Lisa Kleypas. This is a book that was also in my worst books of the year, or least favorite books of the year. And you probably know why if you've seen that movie, or if you've seen that video. Movie. I didn't actually rate this one 1 star because I actually quite liked the writing and I would be interested in reading more from this author. The reason that I hated this book was because the hero was an asshole. And he hated women. He just did not respect women. And his entire inner monologue, the entire book was like, why is this girl like so cute and beautiful and kind and gentle? I know that she has had sex with other men, so like, why isn't she acting like the slut I know she is? And it was like very derogatory and misogynistic and very anti like sex work, because he thinks that the woman is a courtesan, so she like has affairs with society men for protection and money and for funsies. And like, I'm gonna put spoilers here. Basically what happens is the woman who he has been like protecting because she doesn't have her memory and he thinks that she's like the courtesan, ends up being the courtesan's identical twin sister, who actually is like a virgin and, you know, kind and gentle and reads books. And it's like, okay, so he never even has to like confront his preconceived notions. And like aren't characters supposed to like change and grow? Wouldn't that be like, I don't know, it wouldn't be great, but it would be kind of a good arc if he starts the story like, oh, this woman's beautiful, but she's very vain and self-centered, but she's also acting kind and she can read books, and I don't understand why that is, because I just assumed since she was kind of slutty, like, that she would be stupid. But then at the end be like, oh, I've grown to know that women are complex beings with multiple layers and can show a different face at different times, and also don't need to prescribe to any preconceived notion of what a woman is supposed to be, whether they be modest or immodest or whatever. But instead, all of his justifications are like validated, because it turns out that the courtesan is just like kind of a bitch who's stupid and doesn't like to read and is mean. So that was really frustrating, and I didn't particularly like it. But a book I did like, my favorite of the year, my favorite romance of the year, was Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. You've probably heard me talk about this book a couple times. I really loved it. I flew through it so fast. I love the dynamic between the main characters. Georgie is a children's party clown who's trying to like be considered a little bit more of an adult by her family. So she decides to fake date her older brother's best friend Travis, who is a retired Major League Baseball player trying to rehab his bad boy image. And it was just perfection to me. I will say, I hated the ending. I thought the ending was so stupid, but I can excuse it because I loved so much of the rest of this book. It was just perfect. Overall, I just really loved this one, and it was so good. I read it at work, and I read it constantly during the time that I was reading it, and it was just, I couldn't put it down. And that is it, all 5 of my best and all 5 of my worst romances of 2019. I hope you enjoyed. If you've read any of these books and agree or disagree with me, let me know, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!